Hey, it's Amir Borman. This is another episode of the Daily 10 segment of the Talent Tango podcast. I am seated next to my brother.
That's me.
He's Arash. So we talk internally a lot about statements of good intent.
You've heard these, trust me.
Yes, you've definitely heard these. And what we mean by it, just to make sure we all understand what statements of good intent mean is I'm going to do better. I I know that I haven't done well. I'm going to change this. I'm going to. I think every statement of good intent has
I'm
is
gonna work out more.
frameworked with a
I'm gonna lose
gonna.
weight.
Yeah, I'm going to, and it's very difficult to measure. I'm going to do something because there's no commitment, there's no plan, there's no course of action that you know you have to take. It's just that I'm gonna feel good that I'm gonna do this, but the follow-up, a lot left to be, desired and
Yeah,
detailed.
I mean, if it's not measurable, then it's hard to hold yourself accountable, right? So I think as a pun, yes, the intent of a statement of good intent is good, but that's not good enough, essentially, right? You have to be able to quantify that quote unquote goodness that you're going for or shooting for, and to be able to associate that with something that at the end of a specific time period, you can either say, yes, I did, or no, I didn't. And there's no wiggle room, gray area. It is very definitive.
Yeah, even when we do our one-on-ones, we don't like to hear those statements of good intent. I think we stop them, and it's basically like, "Listen, I need to know what specifically you're trying to achieve, what is going to be whatever the metric is, what is going to be the outcome of that metric, and let's observe it." Because otherwise, if it's, I know I need to get more candidates. Well, how many more? 10, 15? How do we know that you did achieve I've gotten enough candidates to the table? So I think a lot of times it's easy to say, I'm going to do something because without the plan, there's no commitment and no one can hold you accountable. And there's not much follow through without accountability.
Well, I totally agree with that. And I also think it's a component of being able to look back, right? To then be able to actually say, okay, maybe I invested too much time for this particular, circumstance or whatever the case is. So I think it's also about trying to grow more. And without having something that you can look back on tangibly and say, yes, I did accomplish this goal and or no, but on the kind of next layer is saying, hey, did I allocate too much time, too many resources or whatever the case is to achieve that goal too, right? So I think it's not only just achieving a goal, it's all the other components that go into the equation to get to that point in time too.
Well, I think if you actually are moving past making a statement of good intent, you actually put a plan to, and again, there's dozens of methodologies of how to set a goal, smart goals, whatever you want to do to framework getting to the end. It doesn't matter. I think you have to pick what works for you.
Right.
But I think you have to also realize that any change requires it is breaking a habit to commit to something new. And I think a lot of times the reason we make statements of good intent and then we don't follow up is you might even start making some inroads, but then you realize it's so hard to make the changes necessary, right? Whether it's, I need to be more efficient, I need to be more whatever those factors are, there's typically a habit change. And if it's, hey, I need to get more candidates, to the hiring manager, that isn't just a case of, well, why haven't you gotten enough candidates? Are you looking for the wrong person? Are you not working hard enough? Again, you're probably having to correct something in terms of the workflow, the process. Sometimes, yes, you do get the occasional, candidates picking up the phone or emails just not interested, and you hit a rut of bad luck. That happens, and that's a bad situation. But for the most part,
Well, that's okay too, right? So you set the tone of, okay, for this particular role, I'm going to reach out to 30 candidates this week, right? You have other priorities and stuff. So at the end of the week, you can measure that and say, yes, I did, or no, I didn't. And then if you don't get any results from that, then you can start to dig a little bit more, and maybe it is the quality of the candidates you reached out to, or it's some other factors. But that's the second component. I think the first component is you want less ambiguity. You want to have definitive yes or no. That
but you have to
the
understand
Gary
what
Vee
to
of
look
being
for.
half pregnant, right? I think statements of good intent are
Yeah,
those very half pregnant type of statements. Like you're
sure.
either in or out, right? And I think the more you could get to the point where you're breaking away from your team or yourself having story time. And those stories typically are filled with many, many excuses or many promises. And those are okay. But if you can cut those out, one, your meetings will get shorter and more efficient. And secondly, you just get down to the facts. What are you committing to? When you walk away from yourself in the mirror or from a one-on-one meeting or whatever the case is, what are you committing to that we can look back in a week, 2 weeks, or whatever that time period and actually say, yes, Arash, you did accomplish that, or no, you didn't. And that doesn't still mean you were effective in the accomplishment. It just means that that specific goal and task that you wanted to try to do, you actually did or didn't.
Yeah, and I think you also have to be able to know that you have to have a sense of what area you're addressing. So you can set the metric, you can set, I'm going to review it in the week. If it's addressing some shortcoming or it's addressing an adjustment, if you don't know where that adjustment is, you're adjusting the wrong thing or you're trying to overcompensate. I'm going to work more hours to get that done, but you're still coming up, short, then you're not addressing the true issue because working more hours should have meant, you're going to increase your volume to a certain extent.
Sure.
And I think you sometimes have to understand what you're trying to fix because without that plan in place of going, well, these are the 5 or 6 steps I need to take to get to, let's say, 30 candidates in a week outreach, whatever that metric is or whatever you're trying to focus on. It could be weight loss. I want to lose 6 pounds by the end of the month. You have to know the steps involved to get there, what the core issue is. I mean, is it poor eating, not exercising,
Right.
eating too late, not eating according to your blood type. I mean, all those things. Without that, you might be addressing a problem, but the actual root cause, you're missing it. You're still going to end up square one, and that's where people get frustrated.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's one component of the entire, pie, right? It's getting to the point where you can have accountability and measurable um goals, but to your point, you also want to take a holistic view at all the components that are going into what you're trying to accomplish. And if you have some areas where you just don't have enough resources or you're falling short, then to your point, you're not going to be able to reach the ultimate goal. So I think it's great to get away from statements of good intent and try to get to more kind of yes I did or no I didn't. But again, you have to look at kind of everything to be able to actually solve the issue and problem. And another component of that is you have to be honest with yourself, right? Like that statement of good intent, like, okay, I'm gonna go work out 4 times this week. If you really know this particular week, like you have a lot of work commitments or outside commitments in your life, you know what? Be realistic and maybe say 3 is the real goal. And if I get to 4, then I'll do something special for myself or whatever the case is. So I think you just got to be honest with yourself when you are trying to kind of get into more accountability and more being able to get away from statements of good intent.
Yeah, I think actually, so yeah, those statements of good intent. I mean, we all make them. I think the self judgment we have on ourselves and the reason sometimes we don't want to set numbers of what we're trying to accomplish is sometimes it's self-judgment. And it's like, well, I missed a working I missed, a workout today. And all of a sudden you're down on yourself. You're not happy that you missed it. And it actually is a negative effect on your overall outlook. And I think that self-judgment is such a harsh piece of the puzzle. And I think when you get to a point where it's like, you know what? I missed it. And I'm human. That's it. Okay, I
Yeah,
missed
it's
it,
gonna
and
happen.
it's gonna happen. But the overall goal is X, Y, and you keep marching forward. Versus when you have established some plan or whatever it is, and you hit a road bump, and that derails everything. That's when it's very difficult to kind of stick to the plans and the statement of good intent and feel better because again, you're not being held accountable to any output.
Yeah, and of course, I mean nobody wants to feel bad, right? I think you go through life wanting to feel good and finding ways to justify your actions. I think when you have a major goal that you're trying to accomplish, you're aware that those little micro goals you might miss on some of those, but if you're hitting on them enough, the macro goal you're going to get to.
Absolutely. Let us know how you guys deal with setting goals, getting derailed from goals, statements of good intent. If you made any in the last month, 2 year, New Year's, whatever it is
Today.
today. And we'll be back again. Thanks.